What happens when a decorated colonel demands a woman's strip in front of 200 elite soldiers? Noon. Arizona sun scorching the training field. Colonel Marcus Hayes paces atop the platform, voice sharp as a whip. We have tourists among us. Daddy's girls who think war is a yoga retreat. His eyes lock on a silent blonde in gray. No rank, no insignia. You, he sneers. Strip now. Gasps ripple. She doesn't flinch. Just steps forward, peels off the shirt, a tattoo, Black Hawk circling a sniper's scope, silence. Then a voice from the back. Sir, permission to speak. That tattoo. Only 5 of us ever earned it. The colonel's jaw tightens. And she, still calm, meets his eyes. 4, she says. The 5th didn't make it out. Before we continue, imagine standing there, surrounded by people waiting for you to break. What would you do? Would you walk away or stand your ground? Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from today. Sarah Miller's alarm never sounds at 5 in the morning because she's already awake staring at the ceiling of her modest Phoenix apartment. The routine never changes. Bare feet hit the floor in absolute silence, muscle memory from years of moving through spaces where sound meant death. She makes coffee with mechanical precision, counting each second the water boils, measuring the grounds to the exact gram. Her neighbors in the building think she's peculiar, the quiet blonde who keeps odd hours and dresses like she shops exclusively at thrift stores. They see the faded jeans, the oversized flannel shirts, the complete absence of makeup or jewelry. They assume she's a struggling college dropout, maybe working multiple jobs to make ends meet. They're half right about the jobs. The Veterans Bookstore where she works part-time pays minimum wage, but Sarah never complains. She arranges military histories and memoirs with reverent care, her fingers lingering on spines that tell stories she'll never share. The owner, a Vietnam veteran named Chuck, noticed early on how she moves through the store. Every step is counted, every corner checked, every entrance and exit mentally cataloged. He stopped asking questions after the 3rd time she helped a customer suffering a PTSD episode, her voice cutting through panic with the precision of a surgeon's blade. You're safe, she'd whispered to the sobbing Marine. Count with me. 4 things you can see, 3 you can hear, 2 you can touch, 1 you can smell. The technique was textbook, but the understanding in her eyes was earned. Her Honda Civic sits in the parking lot like a faithful dog, 200,000 miles on the odometer and rust eating at the wheel wells. She could afford better. The disability checks arrive monthly, though she donates most to Gold Star families through anonymous money orders. The car serves its purpose. Invisible, forgettable. Just another piece of the urban landscape. Inside her apartment, everything has its place. The bed she rarely uses, preferring the floor where her back stays straight and her reactions stay sharp. The kitchen, where meals are fuel, nothing more. The living room with its single chair positioned to see both windows and the door. And the locked drawer in her bedroom, containing a folded flag and dog tags she hasn't worn in 3 years. The letter arrives on a Tuesday, delivered not by regular mail, but by a uniformed courier who checks her identification twice before handing over the sealed envelope. Project Silent Guardian is stamped across the top in letters that seem to pulse with authority. Inside, General Patricia Coleman's signature authorizes what amounts to an order disguised as a request. A new classified training program needs evaluation. Elite soldiers learning advanced survival and psychological warfare resistance. Sarah's presence is strongly requested based on her unique qualifications and perspective. The words are carefully chosen, dancing around what they really mean. We need someone who's been through hell and survived to tell us if this training creates warriors or corpses. Sarah holds the letter for a long time, her 1,000-yard stare focused on something beyond the paper. Her free hand unconsciously moves to her collarbone, where dog tags once rested. The weight of them is phantom pain, like a missing limb that still aches in bad weather. She could refuse. She's done her time, paid prices that can't be calculated in blood or treasure. But something in the general's words catches her attention, a mention of female recruits facing integration challenges that need addressing. Sarah knows what that means in military speak. She's lived it, breathed it, bled for the right to stand among warriors who thought chromosomes determined courage. One last time, she tells herself, folding the letter with precise creases. One last mission to make sure other women don't pay the prices she paid. The decision feels like stepping back into crosshairs, but some battles choose their soldiers. The drive to the Arizona facility takes 3 hours through desert that shifts from city to desolation. Sarah arrives as the sun reaches its peak, her civilian clothes a deliberate choice that she knows will cost her. The guard at the gate does a double take at her authorization, clearly expecting someone in uniform. She parks between 2 Humvees, her ancient Honda looking like a mistake among military vehicles. The other recruits are already gathered, and she can read their pedigrees and their postures. Navy SEALs with their casual arrogance, Rangers with contained violence, Delta Force operators who've learned to become shadows. They size her up in seconds and dismiss her just as quickly. A lost tourist, someone's girlfriend, maybe a journalist who got the wrong credentials. "You lost, sweetheart?" The voice belongs to a Marine, built like a brick wall, all muscle and misplaced confidence. Sarah doesn't respond, simply shows her authorization and moves past him toward the administration building. The whispers follow her like smoke. Colonel Marcus Hayes makes his opinion known within minutes of her arrival. He's everything military stereotype produces: silver eagles on his shoulders, combat infantryman badge polished to mere shine, voice that turns questions into accusations. "I don't care what strings got pulled," he informs her in front of the desk sergeant and 2 lieutenants. "This is a warrior's course, not a social experiment. You'll quit within 3 days. Sarah's quarters assignment confirms the colonel's intentions. The furthest building from all facilities, no air conditioning, a cot that might have seen service in Vietnam. She sets her single bag down without complaint, noting the broken lock on the door and the window that won't close completely. The message is clear. You don't belong here, and we'll make sure you know it. By evening formation, she's already been accidentally excluded from the initial briefing. A supply sergeant claims her equipment requisition was misplaced, leaving her without proper gear for the next day's training. The other recruits watch these small cruelties with varying degrees of interest. Most assume she'll be gone by morning. Lieutenant Jake Morrison notices her first during physical training. While others grunt and swear through the obstacle course, Sarah moves with economy, never first but never last, her breathing controlled where others gasp. He's seen enough combat to recognize the difference between training and experience. The way she checks corners isn't taught in basic, it's learned in places where corners hide death. When the colonel orders extra laps for tourists who slow down the unit, clearly meaning her, she completes them without expression. Morrison starts asking questions that night. Who is this woman? Why is she here? The military database shows nothing under Sarah Miller that matches her description. No service record, no unit history, nothing but the authorization that brought her here. The harassment escalates with mechanical precision. Her equipment goes missing repeatedly, water bottles emptied, boots filled with sand, gear straps cut just enough to fail under stress. Male recruits are encouraged through subtle nods and turned backs to make her uncomfortable. They crowd her space during chow, make comments just loud enough to hear but not loud enough to report. Sarah endures it all with silence that begins to unnerve some of them. She doesn't fight back, doesn't complain, doesn't give them the satisfaction of visible frustration. She simply adapts, carrying extra water, checking her gear twice, creating distance through positioning rather than confrontation. The shower incident happens on day 4. 3 male recruits accidentally enter the communal facility while she's changing, their timing too perfect to be coincidence. What they see stops their harassment mid-sentence. Sarah's back is turned, revealing partial glimpses of an intricate tattoo that covers most of her upper back. Numbers are visible, coordinates that mean nothing to them yet. 34 degrees north, 69 degrees east. A date stands out among the design, 08.15.2019. The men freeze, something about the precision of the ink, the way scars interrupt the pattern, telling a story they're not sure they want to know. They leave quickly, quietly, and word spreads through whispers. The woman has marks, not decorative tattoos chosen for beauty, but something else entirely. Something that speaks of places and times that leave permanent impressions on more than skin. Morrison can't let it go. That night, he inputs the coordinates into a military mapping system. The location that appears makes his blood chill. Korangal Valley, Afghanistan. The Valley of Death, where more Americans died per square meter than almost anywhere else in the war. The date matches something in his memory, a classified operation he'd heard whispers about. Something about a sniper team, ambushed, overrun, calling in danger-close air support on their own position. Only 1 survivor, the reports said, and those reports were sealed at levels Morrison can't access. He starts watching Sarah more carefully, seeing details that were invisible before. The way she automatically positions herself, with clear fields of fire, how her eyes track movement at distances others ignore, the unconscious counting of steps, ranges, angles, that speak of someone who's lived behind a scope. By the end of the first week, the Colonel's frustration has reached a boiling point. Sarah hasn't quit, hasn't complained, hasn't given him any official reason to remove her. She completes every task, passes every test, endures every accident with the same quiet competence. It's not excellence that bothers him. She's deliberately average in everything, never standing out, never failing. It's the principle. Women like her, civilians playing soldier, they undermine everything he believes about warrior culture. He needs her gone, needs her broken in a way that sends a message to whoever thought she belonged here. The final week evaluation assembly will be his opportunity. Public humiliation has broken stronger people than this quiet blonde who thinks she can hide among warriors. The morning of the assembly arrives with desert heat that promises to punish. 200 recruits form up in the main courtyard, their ranks perfect, their attention focused on the raised platform where instructors gather. Colonel Hayes takes his position with the satisfaction of a hunter who's cornered prey. He lets the silence build, lets the sun beat down, lets anticipation grow among those who've watched this drama unfold. Today, he begins, voice carrying across the formation. We evaluate not just your skills but your character, your honesty, your right to stand among warriors. His eyes find Sarah in the third row, and his smile is predatory. Some of you have tried to hide who you really are, tried to pretend you belong here through deception. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke from distant fires. "Miller," he barks, and every head turns to watch her. Front and center. Sarah moves from her position with the same measured steps she's used all week, neither rushing nor delaying. She stops at the prescribed distance, salutes with textbook precision, and waits. The Colonel circles her like a shark, letting the moment build. 200 elite soldiers watch, some with sympathy, some with curiosity, most with the detached interest of those watching inevitable destruction. "You've been hiding something," Hayes announces, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Pretending to be something you're not, wearing costumes while real warriors show their scars." He stops directly in front of her, close enough that his breath hits her face. "Time to show everyone what you're really made of. Remove your shirt. Show these warriors what kind of soft civilian thinks she can play soldier." The silence that follows the Colonel's command is absolute. 200 of America's finest warriors stand frozen, processing what they've just heard. Some shift uncomfortably, recognizing the line being crossed. Others lean forward slightly, morbid curiosity overcoming propriety. The desert wind dies as if nature itself holds its breath. Sarah Miller doesn't move for 10 full seconds. Her eyes remain fixed on a point exactly 3 inches above Colonel Hayes' left shoulder. The 1,000-yard stare of someone looking through present into past. When she finally speaks, her voice carries no emotion, no inflection, just words dropping like shell casings. "Is that an order, sir?" The Colonel's smile widens. He thinks he has her, thinks this is the moment she breaks, runs, proves what he's known all along. "Consider it a strong suggestion, Miller, unless you'd prefer to explain to General Coleman why you were dismissed for failure to integrate with the unit. The threat is clear, the choice an illusion, comply with humiliation or leave in disgrace." Several recruits glance at each other, uncomfortable with what's happening, but trained to follow the chain of command. Morrison takes a half step forward before catching himself. This is wrong. But interfering with a colonel's evaluation could end his career before it properly begins. Sarah's hands move to the hem of her gray t-shirt. The motion is smooth, controlled, exhibiting the same mechanical precision she's shown all week. She pulls the fabric up and over her head in one fluid movement, folding it with military corners before setting it on the ground beside her. She stands in a simple sports bra, back straight, eyes still focused on that invisible point beyond the colonel's shoulder. What the assembly sees kills every whisper, stops every snicker, transforms mockery into something approaching religious awe. Her back tells stories written in ink and scar tissue, a masterpiece of pain and purpose that defends itself without words. The tattoo covers most of her upper back, intricate beyond anything commercial artists produce. 13 names flow in Sanskrit, the ancient language lending gravity to lost souls. Each name is woven through a design that incorporates military symbolism with artistic precision. A sniper's crosshairs centers over her spine, the intersection point scarred by what's clearly a bullet wound. The coordinates are fully visible now. 34 degrees north, 69 degrees east, with the date below. August 15th, 2019. But it's the Latin phrase wrapped around the entire design that makes several Special Forces operators step back. Ultimus discipulus missoris, the last student of the Reaper. Jesus Christ, someone whispers, the words carrying in the silence. Morrison's intake of breath is audible. Korengal Valley, Operation Silent Vigil. The recognition spreads through those who know, those who've heard whispers of the classified operation that went catastrophically wrong. 13 Special Forces operators ambushed in the Valley of Death. A sniper team providing overwatch, pinned down, surrounded. The spotter killed in the first minutes, leaving one shooter to hold a position alone for 73 hours. The fragments of story they know are legend. Confirmed kills in triple digits, calling in danger close air support on her own position to save the trapped team below. Refusing evacuation until every American body was recovered. Colonel Hayes' face is drained of color. He recognizes the Sanskrit names now. 13 Special Forces operators who died in Korengal despite the sniper's efforts. Men whose families received letters about heroism and sacrifice, never knowing the full story of who held death at bay for 3 days and nights. The scars, interrupting the tattoo, tell their own stories. Shrapnel patterns from the airstrike she called on herself. Surgical scars from damage that should have killed her. Each mark a testament to prices paid in places where politicians' speeches meet reality's teeth. Turn around, the colonel manages, his voice stripped of its earlier authority. Sarah complies with the same mechanical precision. Her front reveals more history written in damaged flesh, GSW scars that speak of rounds that found their mark but failed to stop her, a knife wound across her ribs that required field suturing. But it's her eyes that complete the revelation. Empty of anger, empty of pride, empty of everything except the weight carried by those who've seen too much. Several combat veterans in the formation unconsciously straighten to attention. They recognize those eyes, have seen them in mirrors after their own returns from hell. This isn't a civilian playing soldier. This is a warrior who's earned the right to be forgotten. An older instructor, a master sergeant with Vietnam ribbons, breaks protocol. "Ghost Miller," he says, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I thought you were dead." The nickname ripples through the ranks. Ghost Miller, the sniper who vanished after Korengal, who refused the Medal of Honor because accepting would mean publicity, who told a congressional committee that dead men don't need ceremonies, they need silence, who disappeared into America rather than become a poster child for women in combat. The pieces fall into place with devastating clarity. This isn't someone pretending to be a warrior. This is someone pretending to be civilian. 143 confirmed saves, Morrison says, his research finally making sense. They say you learned from Reaper Williams himself. At that name, even the Navy SEALs straighten. Reaper Williams, the sniper's sniper, who took exactly one student in his entire career, who said training her was like teaching death to be more efficient, who died in her arms after an IED took his legs, making her promise to use what he taught to bring Americans home. She'd kept that promise in Korengal, trading pieces of herself for lives saved, holding a position that 13 men died trying to reach. "Sir," Sarah's voice cuts through the whispers, still emotionless, still fixed on that point past Hayes' shoulder. "May I retrieve my shirt?" The question hangs in the air like a challenge wrapped in subservience. She's given him what he demanded, shown what he insisted on seeing. Now she waits, neither proud nor ashamed, for permission to cover scars that were never meant for display. The colonel's mouth opens, closes, opens again. Around them, 200 elite warriors stand at attention without being ordered, offering the only salute that matters, recognition from those who've been where maps end and nightmares begin. Colonel Hayes finds his voice, though it lacks the thunder of minutes before. "You may." Sarah bends with the same controlled movement, retrieves her shirt and pulls it on. The gray fabric covers history but changes nothing. Everyone has seen, everyone knows. She returns to attention, waiting for dismissal that doesn't come. The colonel stares at her, processing the magnitude of his miscalculation. This isn't some diversity hire or political appointment. This is a tested warrior who chose anonymity over acclaim, who's been completing his harassment exercises with the patience of someone who's endured far worse. "Why?" Hayes asks, the single word carrying more questions than one syllable should hold. Why hide? Why endure his abuse? Why attend this training when her credentials surpass most instructors? Sarah's eyes finally meet his, and for the first time all week, she shows emotion. A sadness so profound it makes hardened soldiers look away. Because 13 men can't speak for themselves, sir, someone has to remember them correctly. The answer is cryptic to most, clear to those who understand survivor's guilt. She's here because the dead can't be, because every qualification she earned cost lives she couldn't save. Dismissed, Hayes manages, but nobody moves. The formation stands frozen, processing what they've witnessed. Sarah turns to go, takes 3 steps, then stops as a voice calls out, "Wait!" It's Master Sergeant Chen, the instructor who recognized her. "The 13, will you tell us their names?" The question breaks protocol 17 different ways, but nobody cares. Sarah turns back, and for the first time since arriving, something like warmth touches her features. She speaks 13 names in Sanskrit, the ancient language giving weight to each syllable. With every name comes a fragment of story: the sergeant who covered her displacement, the lieutenant who held the perimeter until his ammunition ran out, the medic who used his body to shield wounded until shrapnel found gaps in his armor. When she finishes, several veterans have tears on their faces. These aren't just names anymore. They're brothers whose sacrifice has been carried in Sanskrit on one woman's back, written in a language older than countries because some debts transcend borders. "They saved me first," Sarah says simply. "I just returned the favor for as long as I could." The understatement hits harder than any boast. 73 hours of returning favors. 3 days of precision violence holding death at bay. One woman with a rifle and the ghost of her teacher making every shot count until physics and mathematics couldn't stretch any further. General Patricia Coleman's arrival is unexpected but not coincidental. Her helicopter touches down with timing that suggests surveillance, that this confrontation was observed and allowed to reach its conclusion. She emerges in full dress uniform, stars catching sunlight as she approaches the assembly. Hayes snaps to attention so quickly his back audibly pops. The general ignores him entirely, walking straight to Sarah. "Sergeant Major Miller," she uses the rank Sarah never mentions. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." The pieces click into place for those paying attention. This wasn't random selection. This was the general using Sarah to expose something rotten in the colonel's command. "Ma'am?" Sarah responds, neither confirming nor denying the implication. Coleman turns to address the assembly, her voice carrying authority earned in combat zones. "I've been monitoring this training evolution with particular interest, specifically the integration challenges faced by certain recruits." Her eyes find Hayes, and her expression could freeze blood. "What I've observed requires immediate correction. Colonel Hayes, you're relieved of this command pending investigation into systematic harassment and conduct unbecoming an officer." The colonel's mouth opens to protest, but Coleman's raised hand stops him. "Your transfer orders are already cut. Report to Pentagon Administrative Division by 0800 tomorrow." The general isn't finished. "Some of you witnessed what happened here and said nothing. Others participated in harassment disguised as unit cohesion. This ends now. We don't break our own to prove they belong. We recognize warriors by their actions, not their demographics." She pauses, letting the words sink in. "Sergeant Major Miller has forgotten more about sacrifice than most of you will ever learn. The fact that she endured this treatment silently speaks to her discipline, not your discretion." Several recruits shift uncomfortably, remembering their own participation in the week's cruelties. Morrison steps forward, surprising himself with the breach of protocol. "Ma'am, some of us tried to research her background. Everything's classified." Coleman's smile is sharp as winter wind. "That's because Sergeant Major Miller's full service record would compromise ongoing operations. What you're cleared to know is this: she's here at my personal request to evaluate whether this program creates warriors or sociopaths. Based on this week's events, I have my answer. The judgment lands like artillery, leaving craters in egos and assumptions." Sarah speaks for the first time since the general's arrival. "Permission to withdraw from the program, ma'am?" Coleman turns to her with something approaching maternal concern. "Denied. You'll complete the training, though instructors will be reminded that you're here as an evaluator, not a target. Your insights on psychological warfare resistance are particularly needed. The order is gentle but firm." Sarah's contribution isn't finished just because her secret's exposed. If anything, her revealed expertise makes her presence more valuable, not less. "There's something else," Coleman continues, addressing the full assembly again. "The Pentagon has authorized a ceremony to properly recognize Sergeant Major Miller's actions in Korengal. Full honors, media coverage, the works." She watches Sarah's face carefully as she speaks. "Which she'll refuse as she's refused every attempt at public recognition for the past 3 years, because she believes the dead deserve memory more than the living deserve medals. The prediction proves accurate as Sarah's expression closes off completely. No ceremonies, no spotlights, no using the 13 as stepping stones to fame. A recruit near the back, one who participated in the harassment, finds his voice. "We didn't know." The excuse hangs in the air like smoke from cheap cigarettes. Chen, the Vietnam veteran instructor, responds before Coleman can. "You didn't need to know. You needed to act like the warriors you claimed to be. Instead, you acted like high school bullies with security clearances." The condemnation stings worse coming from enlisted rather than officers. These are the standards they've failed, the brotherhood they've betrayed by turning on one of their own. The assembly disperses with the awkward movements of soldiers processing shame. Some approach Sarah to apologize, but she waves them off with minimal gestures. Apologies are words, and words didn't hold Korangal. As the crowd thins, Colonel Hayes makes one last attempt at salvaging dignity. "I was testing unit cohesion," he tells Coleman, desperation leaking through military bearing. Ensuring standards remained high. The general's response could etch glass. "You were protecting your ego by attacking someone you saw as weak. The only standard you maintained was the one that keeps warriors silent about abuse." Hayes has no response that won't deepen his grave. He salutes and retreats, his career effectively ended by his own cruelty. Sarah starts walking toward her quarters, but Morrison intercepts her. "Why didn't you say something? First day, you could have shut this down." She studies him with eyes that have calculated wind speeds over corpses. "Would you have learned anything if I had?" The question contains its own answer. Morrison thinks about the week, about watching harassment escalate, about his own hesitation to intervene. "We failed you," he admits. Sarah shakes her head. "You failed yourselves. I've been failed by better." The dismissal is gentle but final. She's endured worse than their ignorance, survived more than their disrespect. That evening, a package appears outside Sarah's quarters. Inside, 13 challenge coins from different special forces units, each one left by a recruit who researched the names on her back. A note reads, "We remember them too now." Sarah holds each coin, feeling the weight of metal and meaning. These tokens matter more than medals because they come from the enlisted, from those who understand that glory is for politicians while grief is for soldiers. She arranges them carefully on her windowsill, 13 circles catching moonlight like small shields against forgetting. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look? Share your story in the comments. The leak happens within hours. Someone's phone captured portions of the confrontation, though Sarah's face remains mostly obscured by angle and distance. The video spreads through military networks faster than classified information should travel. "Female soldier forced to strip. What happens next will restore your faith" becomes the clickbait title that makes Sarah disappear from base before dawn. She leaves only a letter for General Coleman. Evaluation complete. Program produces capable warriors but needs ethical oversight. Recommendations attached. Please ensure the colonel's replacement understands that strength includes knowing when not to use it. The recommendations are detailed, professional, and devastating in their critique. Sarah identifies 17 specific incidents where training crossed into abuse, 12 policies that enable discrimination, and 9 instructors who should be reviewed for similar behavior. But she also highlights the recruits who showed moral courage, the moments where warriors chose dignity over conformity. Her report is balanced, fair, and impossible to dismiss. Coleman implements every suggestion within a month, turning the program into a model for integrated training. Colonel Hayes' desk duty proves temporary. Within 3 months, he's processed out on early retirement, his final evaluation noting failure to maintain standards consistent with military values. The truth is harder. He's become a cautionary tale whispered in officers' clubs, the colonel who tried to break a ghost and found himself haunted. Several female recruits report that his replacement, Colonel Amanda Foster, references ghost protocol in her welcome brief. "You belong here. Anyone who says otherwise will answer to me and the memory of those who proved it with blood." Morrison finds himself thinking about Sarah's question weeks later during a night operation. His team encounters local civilians and his first instinct is to dismiss their intelligence value based on appearance. The memory of gray t-shirts and hidden warriors stops him. He takes time, asks questions, learns that the elderly woman knows patrol schedules better than his intel briefs. The lesson saves lives when her information reveals an ambush. He tries to find Sarah to thank her, but her trail ends at the bookstore where she no longer works. Chuck, the owner, says only that she left to help other veterans, other ghosts learning to live with what they carry. The ripple effects spread through military culture in subtle ways. Female recruits at various facilities report finding anonymous notes of encouragement during their hardest moments. Hold the line becomes an unofficial motto, appearing on bathroom mirrors and inside equipment lockers. Stories spread of a blonde woman who visits veterans' hospitals, teaching breathing techniques to those fighting invisible wars. She never gives her name, never stays long, but the techniques she teaches are specific to combat trauma, too precise for civilian counselors. The ghost continues her mission, one saved soul at a time. 6 months after the incident, a female recruit named Davis struggles through the same program under Colonel Foster's reformed command. The harassment is gone, but the training remains brutal. She's considering quitting when she finds a note in her quarters. "You belong here. The 13 believe that. So do I. Hold the line. Ghost." The message gives her strength to continue, to push through exhaustion and doubt. She graduates with honors, never knowing if the note was real or legend. It doesn't matter. The ghost's message has become larger than one person, transforming into collective conscience that guards against cruelty disguised as standards. Sarah's new mission operates from shadows, fitting for someone who learned war through a scope. She identifies struggling veterans through networks that don't officially exist, appears when breakdown threatens, disappears when stability returns. The money she saves from living simply funds safe houses where combat veterans can decompress without questions or paperwork. Her Honda Civic becomes a familiar sight at 3 a.m. outside VA hospitals, waiting to transport those who can't stand another night of clinical white walls and clipboard compassion. She never asks for their stories, never shares her own unless tactically necessary. She simply exists as proof that survival is possible, that ghosts can find purpose beyond haunting. The bookstore where she worked becomes an unofficial gathering place for those she's helped. Chuck keeps her photo tucked behind the register, the only known image of her smiling, caught off guard while shelving a donation of military histories. Veterans stop by to leave messages she'll never receive, updates on lives salvaged from spirals. "Ghost pulled me back," they tell Chuck, who nods and adds their stories to a notebook that's becoming its own form of memorial. The store transforms into a shrine to anonymous intervention, to the radical idea that warriors save each other without requiring credit. Sarah's methods draw attention from unexpected quarters. Dr. Patricia Huang, a VA psychiatrist studying innovative trauma treatments, notices patterns in her patients' recovery stories. Veterans arriving at the edge of suicide suddenly stabilize, citing encounters with someone who understood without explanation. The descriptions vary, sometimes a blonde woman, sometimes just a voice in darkness, but the techniques remain consistent. Breathing exercises that account for adrenaline, grounding methods that work under fire, cognitive restructuring that speaks fluent combat. Huang requests permission to study what she privately calls the ghost protocol, but her subjects refuse to provide details. Loyalty runs deeper than clinical curiosity. The 13 graves receive visitors throughout the year, but dawn on August 15th brings something special. 13 small American flags appear at unmarked headstones, placed with military precision before sunrise. The cemetery groundskeeper stopped trying to catch whoever places them after recognizing the practiced movements of someone who's done too many burial details. Sarah kneels at each grave, whispers names in Sanskrit, updates the dead on lives they saved through her rifle. Thompson's daughter graduated medical school, she tells one stone. Martinez's son enlisted, says he wants to be like his dad. The conversations are one-sided in physics, reciprocal in purpose. Her latest safe house operates from an abandoned strip mall in Phoenix's industrial district. Officially, it doesn't exist. Practically, it's become a way station for those transitioning between warrior and whatever comes after. No intake forms, no mandatory meetings, just space to exist without judgment, and resources for those ready to use them. Sarah funds it through a network of anonymous donors, veterans who've stabilized helping those still falling. The police know to ignore the gatherings of rough-looking individuals at odd hours. The neighbors learn that the safest block in Phoenix is the one protected by those who've faced worse than street crime. A young Marine named Thompson finds the safe house after his third suicide attempt. He arrives, angry, drunk, convinced that nobody understands the weight of shooting a child who was rigged with explosives. Sarah appears from nowhere, hands him water, and says simply, 14 years old, Kandahar province. The vest would have killed 30 people at the checkpoint. Thompson freezes. She knows. Not generically, specifically. You save 30 lives by taking one. The math is horrible, but the alternative was worse. She doesn't minimize his trauma or offer empty comfort. She simply sits with him in the truth that some choices leave scars regardless of their necessity. The conversation that follows breaks Thompson's isolation without breaking his dignity. Sarah shares techniques that account for moral injury, not just PTSD. She teaches him to honor the child's memory while forgiving himself for living. When he asks how she knows so much, she rolls up her sleeve to show a small tattoo, coordinates, and a date. My first was younger, she says, strapped to a donkey approaching a school, 200 kids inside. The shared horror creates connection that therapy couldn't achieve. Thompson stays at the safe house for 3 weeks, learning to carry weight without drowning. He leaves with tools and a phone number that will always be answered. Word spreads through networks that don't appear on organizational charts. The ghost has a way of appearing when breakdown threatens, of knowing exactly what weight each person carries. Some say she has access to classified files. Others believe she's developed a network of informants. The truth is simpler and sadder. She recognizes the specific fractures that different traumas create because she carries the complete collection. Every intervention costs her something, reopening wounds to prove survival is possible. But the 13 demand this service, and she's never failed a ghost's request. Colonel Foster contacts Sarah through intermediaries, requesting her input on integrating peer support into official training. The response comes typed on plain paper. Formal programs create barriers. Pain recognizes pain without paperwork. Fund the quiet helpers. Ignore the loud heroes. Results matter more than reports. Foster implements the suggestions, creating space for informal networks while protecting them from bureaucratic interference. Mental health statistics improve dramatically, though nobody can officially explain why. The ghost's methodology becomes doctrine without attribution, spreading through military culture like beneficial virus. A documentary filmmaker tracking veteran suicides discovers the ghost protocol through statistical anomalies. Suicide rates drop in specific patterns that suggest intervention rather than coincidence. His investigation leads to Chuck's bookstore, to cemetery groundskeepers, to Thompson and dozens like him. Everyone confirms the ghost exists, but refuses to provide identifying details. "She saved my life by seeing me," one veteran explains. "I won't repay that by exposing her." The filmmaker abandons the project after realizing that some stories protect themselves, that exposure would destroy what makes the ghost effective. Sarah's own demons visit at 3 a.m., when the safe house is quiet and the weight of survival feels heavier than rifle and ammunition ever did. She sees the 13 in peripheral vision, hears their voices in wind through broken windows. The guilt of living gnaws with teeth that never dull. But each successful intervention adds counterweight, each saved life partially balancing the ledger of those she couldn't protect. The work is neither healing nor penance, but something between, a functional dysfunction that transforms trauma into purpose without pretending the wounds have closed. General Coleman retires with a final act of protection, classifying Sarah's full-service record under provisions usually reserved for intelligence operatives. The official story becomes myth, details blurring until nobody's certain what's real versus legend. This suits Sarah perfectly. Ghosts work best when their existence can be doubted, when help appears as coincidence rather than mission. She continues driving the same Honda, wearing the same thrift store clothes, living the same deliberately small life that creates space for others to become large again. The 13 would approve of the economy, the efficiency of turning their loss into others' salvation. A Senate subcommittee investigating veteran mental health receives an anonymous report detailing the ghost protocol's success rates. The data is comprehensive, compelling, and completely unofficial. Senators demand to know who's running this shadow network, where the funding originates, how oversight is maintained. The questions reveal fundamental misunderstandings. The ghost doesn't run anything. She simply exists as proof that some battles continue after discharge. The funding comes from those who've been saved paying forward. The oversight is the harshest possible, the daily judgment of the dead who demand their sacrifice means something. Sarah stands at her apartment window, watching sunrise paint the desert in shades of forgiveness. The locked drawer remains closed, the dog tags untouched, the folded flag a reminder of prices paid. But the phone rings steadily. Veterans in crisis, family members seeking help, ghosts calling to ghosts across the darkness. She answers each call with the same steady voice that once called in coordinates for precision strikes. The war has changed but never ended, simply shifted from external enemies to internal ones. And Sarah Miller, who learned death from the best teacher it ever had, now teaches life with the same relentless precision. The 13 names in Sanskrit across her back aren't just memorial, but mission statement. Every life saved adds meaning to their sacrifice. Every intervention honors their memory. In the end, the ghost protocol isn't about her at all. It's about the radical idea that warriors save each other, that strength lives in silence, that the best operations leave no trace except lives quietly salvaged from darkness. She disappears into the morning light, another call pulling her toward another soul needing proof that survival is possible. The ghost continues her rounds, and the 13 rest a little easier knowing their last student learned the most important lesson: how to hold the line when the war comes home.